So I'm Frank Vanclay. I'm Professor of Cultural Geography in the Faculty of Spatial Sciences at the University of Groningen. I'm from Australia originally, but I've been in the Netherlands for 5 years. My field of interest is social impact assessment and its relationship to social license to operate. So a social license to operate in the Arctic, it really isn't defined any differently than a social license to operate anywhere else. In effect, social license to operate is the social acceptability or social legitimacy of a company, of a product, of a project, or a whole sector for that matter. So companies, when they're operating anywhere, if they don't get a social license to operate, they'll find that there'll be increasing consumer and community resistance to their project. So it's important for them to think about what is it going to take for them to achieve the acceptability from the community and other stakeholders. In the Arctic, this means getting the approval of a wide range of groups, from international NGOs through to the local communities where the projects are located. Sometimes the question is asked whether a social license to operate should be formalised or regulated, but that's a nonsensical question, because the social license to operate is the approval or acceptance that comes from the various groups of people. It's not something that can actually be regulated. What can be regulated is industry standards for how companies should practice. This can be reinforced at the national level. Industry organisations can implement policies and standards. Companies can have policies and standards. Various associations can have policy standards. So regulation happens directly through what countries' national governments do. It happens indirectly through these industry bodies and so on. But that's not the concept of the social license to operate. So a company needs a social license to operate so that it doesn't face resistance from its stakeholder groups. It needs to think how it can get that. Part of getting that actually is having, treating the community and other stakeholders with respect. It's also about having effective interactions with those groups. The government has a role in social license to operate, perhaps in ensuring that agreements between companies and communities are upheld, in providing mechanisms, in encouraging. There's a leadership role that governments can take to encourage companies to think about how they're getting their social license to operate. Essentially though, the concept of social license to operate is the social legitimacy that comes from people. It's not something to be formalised or established by government, but governments can play a leadership role in encouraging companies to consider what their social license to operate is. The definition of social license to operate is the acceptability or legitimacy of a project, of a company, of a product, of a whole sector. So for Arctic industries and maritime industries to get a social license inherently means that it will increase its legitimacy. Perhaps I'll say one more thing. A social license to operate isn't just a once-off immediate thing. It's something that companies need to have an ongoing relationship with. They need to think about it on an ongoing basis. There's a relationship between a company and a community that happens at all phases of a project or the life of a company. And it's quite often thought that rather than just say a social license to operate, you can also think about a social license to operate and grow. Getting a social license to operate is not only necessary for the ongoing approval of the projects in a particular place, but it adds to the reputation of the company. And so having a social license to operate and grow means the reputation that you have in other places. Having a good reputation in one place facilitates access to project sites in other places.